Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for our next Facebook Live with the Horticulturists. What is this, like our third or fourth one now? We're having fun? Yeah, fourth one, I think. Yeah, so we've got a couple of questions that people have kind of put in previously, but if you've got questions, start putting them into the comment box below our live session here, and we will get to those questions. But to start out, we are going to kind of talk about some different stuff that's going on in our landscapes. So one of those things that's been happening in my landscape are aphids. You guys have seen a lot of aphids this season. So I brought a couple of samples we're gonna show you. The plant that has them the worst in my landscape right now is this butterfly weed, which is a milkweed, and they are just covered in these kind of yellowish orange aphids. So I think we're going to get a close-up of them on the screen here. But they are just completely
same in my yard.
covered.
There are a lot of milkweeds in my yard right now, just absolutely infested with them.
And that tends to happen, it seems like, later in the season. They tend to kind of take over, and a lot of people kind of get concerned. They're like, "Well, is this going to kill my milkweed? What's gonna happen?" And Kelly's going to talk to us a little bit about kind of beneficial insects, because I've done nothing. I've just kind of let them go on my plants because I know there's going to be some natural predators that are going to come in and take care of these. So I'm not too concerned about them. There are, of course, several control techniques like insecticidal soap and other things, but I know Kelly's going to tell us a little bit more about the natural predators so that you don't have to do that, right,
Plus,
Kelly?
You wouldn't want to, spray a pesticide on a plant that you're actually trying to get butterflies and caterpillars to eat. So
yeah, exactly.
That goes into aphids. I absolutely get really, really excited when I see an aphid population because I know that I'm going to see a lot of beneficial insects. And because aphids are big and dumb and full of sugar.
Are you going to say something else?
Big and dumb and full of sugar. And so they attract a lot of beneficial insects. One beneficial insect that they attract is an aphid parasitoid. And this is a miniature parasitic wasp that lays the egg inside the aphid's body. The larva of that wasp eats the aphid from the inside out.
Which is cool.
And then it pupates. It turns into this like brown, papery kind of aphid-looking thing.
So you should see that little brown, like round spot on there. That's what we're talking about.
Yep, and we call it a mummy. And so I know that aphid has been parasitized by wasp, and I know that I'm going to have future control. So you turn that over, you see one little brown, and you see here, you see live ones, and you see ones that are kind of fatter and papery. Those are the ones that have already been parasitized. So would I spray this population? Absolutely not, because I have a lot of future control right there. The next one we'll go to is an aphid lion. And an aphid...
It's on there. You're good.
And an aphid lion is the larva of a green lacewing. Green lacewings are pollinators in our garden. But this guy will actually go through and eat tons of aphids. He may not eat them all, but he'll stab them and throw them to the ground.
And that's such a cool
photo.
What
a cool predator. Yeah.
So
that's
he is wonderful. Actually, my colleague Heather Lash took this picture, and I've used it ever since I've seen it. It's amazing. You see the adults, you turn over the leaves, you see this guy running around, you know that you're about to get rid of 400 to 500 aphids, plus not to mention the more that are going to be on there. And then the third one I'm going to talk about is called the Hoover fly. Now this is one that is flying around a lot lately. This is its peak season. A lot of people think it's a sweat bee because it kind of comes up on your skin and tries to drink your sweat. But it's not a bee, it's an actual fly. And its larva, you see in the picture here, is a great big aphid-eating maggot.
Gross.
And it will also eat tons of aphids. And, they'll eat things that are smaller than themselves, like some eggs, and so will the aphid lion, but they're just wonderful when it comes to aphids, because, like I said, they're big, stupid, or big, dumb, and full of sugar. And so, that's that Hoover fly that's flying around. People think it's a sweat bee. I know it's not a bee because it has 2 wings and not 4 wings. Mm-hmm. And then the very last one is one that you guys know very commonly is the ladybug. And this is kind of unusual because the adult and the larva will eat aphids. But most of the time when I show people the image of a larva, they have no clue that that's what's going to turn into a ladybug. Mm-hmm. And so you see in this picture, this is a larva and actually a pupa of a ladybug. And so this ladybug also will eat those aphids up. Mm-hmm. So when you see aphids and an aphid infestation or certain types of things that you think, oh, I need to spray. Sometimes we just haven't been trained to look for beneficial insects. Mm-hmm. And, look for the other insects on there, see if there's anything eating it, and then, show the kids, right?
Yeah, it's been fun to kind of watch and see how fast I'm going to get some predators on there. And like I said, I've just kind of let them go, and I know eventually.
Yeah, and if you really can't stand it, you can pick them off.
Yeah, and you can do even a blast with the hose. You can spray them off that way, too. So there's lots of other natural ways to do it, too.
My thing is, I want to spray them off with a hose if it gets, or tell people to do that. But then what about the little tiny monarchs that you can't see?
I know, that's the thing. Yeah. Because there's on some of my plants, the seed pods are pretty big and they're just coated in aphids right now. There's so many aphids on them.
But,
they'll be fine.
Without a doubt, you have all 4 of those beneficial insects in your landscape right now.
Yeah, for sure. So that's always a good thing. Awesome. Well, the questions are rolling in, so let's take a break to answer some questions, and then we'll get back to Ryan's show and tell in between questions. So Kathy is asking, what should I do to get rid of the silver powder on my peony plants? That's a great question. I almost grabbed a sample as I was walking in the building today because there's peonies out front of the building. And that silvery powder is powdery mildew, which happens almost every year on peony plants and a lot of other things. A lot of things in the landscape. And to be honest, Kathy, I probably wouldn't do anything. Most of the time that powdery mildew is at a low enough rate that it's never going to kill your plant. It certainly could stress it a little bit because it is covering the leaf surface, but this time of year, it's too late to do anything except to kind of prune out some of that damaged foliage. If you're really concerned, you could do a preventative fungicide next year, but like I said, it typically is not severe enough to warrant that.
Yeah, it's something I just live with on my plants.
Yeah. And it is a preventative. A lot of people will bring in samples later in the season and they want to know what they can spray now. Once that powdery fungal growth is on there, it's too late to spray anything at that point. So you're kind of prepping for next year, basically.
Yeah. Just pay attention to what it's on this year. Yeah. If you really want it to look good, be prepared to spray next year.
Yeah. And clean up this fall, too. So don't leave that foliage for the winter. Clean that up. Don't compost it. Kind of get it out of there so that hopefully next year you have less fungal spores to hang around.
When I worked in the industry, we used to spray insecticidal soap on powdery mildew because a lot of people don't know that insecticidal soap has fungicidal properties, but the leaf would still look bad because it would just kill the powdery mildew, but you still had that big brown blotches. Mm-hmm. So, I think cleaning up before the winter is the most important.
That's really a bit. And with peonies, you just kind of know, like, they're going to look awesome in the spring, especially when they're flowering, but later in the season, the foliage, it looks crummy every year. It's just,
another one that gets it a lot is lilac.
Yeah.
And some of these woody plants, maybe pruning to thin some of the foliage can help for next year too. Just get a little bit of airflow in there. Mm-hmm. That's about all I do with my lilacs.
Yeah, but great question, Kathy. Let's see, Maddie said these pictures rock. Thanks, Maddie. Those are fun to share. Greg has a question here. What is the best thing to use to keep earwigs and slugs from chewing holes in the leaves of his hostas? He uses 7 currently. So other recommendations, earwigs and slugs and hostas.
I love earwigs because they hibernate in the soil, mated together, like a couple.
How romantic. But then they eat holes in your leaves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then that's not ideal. That's not ideal.
When it comes to slugs and earwigs, they really, really like that moist environment that you're allowing them to be in. So you might have to do some dividing, cut back some of your leaves on your hostas. Another thing is if it's really bad, you might want to pull out some of that mulch and redo the mulch. But, I personally would not spray or kill with anything, but prevent them from wanting to be there in the first place. And it's really, how can you prevent the moisture buildup in that area? What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I agree. That's probably the only way I've handled it, is just by dividing my stand a little more. And, it gives you some great plant material to go put somewhere else.
Yeah, I always tell people in master gardener training, don't plant a slug highway. Like, if you don't want slugs to just overtake, don't plant an entire row of hosta and expect them to not just move on down the line. Kind of mix it up with other plants that are less susceptible to slugs and
really good
break
point.
it up a little bit.
Really good point. Yeah, mix in something else, a small shrub or something that can kind of just make it not as so, homogeneous across that stand and break it up a little bit. Yeah.
I think diatomaceous earth will kill slugs. I'm not sure about earwigs.
Yeah,
it probably will, the way it acts. It cuts their body, but I'm not a person that's going to use diatomaceous earth because I have a dog. So if you don't have a dog, that could be another alternative you use is diatomaceous earth, which is you just sprinkle it around the hostas and it'll kill anything soft-bodied that goes across it.
Yeah. Gruesome but effective.
I
know some gardeners will do crushed up eggshells too for the same effect.
Never used that.
There's always baits too. A lot of people try to use baits for slugs. They'll put beer in a shallow can, or earwigs. I've always heard like vegetable oil or fish oil, and I think that tends to be somewhat effective. But
it's a myth.
Changing the environment is a lot more effective.
I think the beer will show you that you have slugs,
but it's not going to catch enough
to
make it worthwhile.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an insignificant amount that you capture.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Same thing like with earwigs. I know some people will say, we'll put down a piece of cardboard, and then in the morning they're all going to be under there. And then it's like, well, what do you do then? You just crush them all? I mean, I guess that's your strategy. It's a good way to find out if you have them, though.
Or some insecticidal soap.
Yeah.
I would crush them.
Yeah. That's what people will do. So, lots of options there for slugs and earwigs. Okay, we got a couple other questions coming in. Kathy wants to know, she's been letting some vines grow this year, thinking they were sweet autumn clematis she planted a couple years ago, but now she's wondering if they're weeds with little white flowers. Any advice on telling the difference between sweet autumn clematis and a look-alike weed?
Eek.
Yeah. My sweet autumn clematis is not flowering yet, and I haven't seen any others flowering yet.
Kelly doesn't like sweet autumn clematis.
Tell us why, Kelly.
It's an invasive species.
I think it is a lovely vine if you keep it controlled.
But she has. I bet you she has sprouts all over her yard.
More than likely.
Of sweet autumn clematis.
More than likely.
We do have a duty to, not grow things that could potentially get into our natural areas. Candice.
I'm far enough away. I'm okay.
Okay.
I was strategic.
As far as white flower blooming right now on a vine, I just have not seen anything. I thought she was going to talk about the milkweed vine for a minute.
Yeah.
And they have little flowers, but...
Kathy, if you can send us a picture of the leaves, that would help a lot. We could compare it to the leaves of sweet autumn clematis.
And the flower.
And the flower, of course.
We can at least tell what family it's in by the flower.
Yeah, and the leaf would help too. Yeah, because mine is not flowering yet, and I cannot think of anything else that's white blooming vine right now either. So
especially with small flowers.
Yeah, so we might need a little bit more pictures and info on that, Kathy, before we can figure that out.
You're kind of, it's kind of like my mom, who she'll say, "What's that purple flower with the green leaves?" And I'm like,
Is it vining? Is
Which one?
What is it? I know.
You have a master's degree, Kelly, and you don't know? I'm like, no.
Need a little more info.
Sometimes, we just need some pictures, and it'll help us out. Every now and then we get lucky, but pictures are awesome when it comes to identifying things.
Definitely. Yeah, so you could even put those in the comments, Kathy, if you have a picture. Awesome. Okay, and keep those questions coming in the comment box. You guys are doing awesome today. We've got a couple others here. Julia wants to know, she has a barrel composter that they got for their new house. She's never had one. Any best practices, anything to watch out for? Anybody ever barrel composter?
I've been composting. I don't compost in a barrel composter, but...
Yeah, I've had a couple of gardens and community gardens that have used them, and they seem to work pretty well. They're small. You're going to fill it up pretty fast, which tends to be the biggest struggle for me. And it's all in one, so you almost have to... You can't continually put fresh stuff in it all the time. You need to kind of let it compost for a while so that you're going to have some finished compost, basically. If you just keep adding fresh and new material to it, you're never really going to have a finished compost to get out of it.
It's always going to be in flux.
Yeah, so on like a 3-bin system where you can kind of have like your new, your composting, and your finished, it's all in one.
Yeah, that's how I do it, is with bins.
Yeah.
But mine also doesn't look pretty. I mean, it's
piles
of stuff in bins. Yeah. So the barrel composters definitely look a little nicer. I think it is great that you can rotate it.
Yeah.
You know, I do that by hand with a pitchfork. So there's some benefits, but yeah, other than watching how much stuff you put in, I don't know that I would have any other great tips.
Just make sure you're adding some moisture to it, since it's not open and it's not going to get rain naturally. You might have to add some additional moisture to it.
And sometimes I find that if I don't add browns, then I start having problems with, like for instance, there's been some rats in the neighborhood trying to get into my compost, and I think it's because I'm not adding enough browns, because I just don't have enough browns right now.
Yeah.
What I mean by browns, it's like straw.
Dried material.
Leaves. Like, you know, before last summer, I like bagged the leaves and kept them in my garage so I can add them to the compost, because, you know, in the winter you don't have any browns. What else is a good brown? You know, it's like
some of the like dead stalks of plants you pull out of your garden.
Yeah,
will turn brown.
Stems, stuff like that.
So sometimes, you know, just adding that, and you know, I used to add paper towels as
newspaper
to just you know, try to keep that carbon nitrogen ratio in check, because you add so many fresh materials that sometimes it kind of looked, you know, would try to go soupy or something.
Well, yeah, if it's really moist and there's a lot of smell to it, that's a good sign too that you're needing to add some more brown materials. Yeah, so just keep an eye on it, I think, is the main tip. Okay, Jennifer is asking for some recommendations on fall maintenance on gardens just in general. They have a compaction problem, very hard soil. They've used gypsum this spring, and it seemed to help at first, but after multiple waterings and rains, it's right back to its hard self.
Gosh, cover crops seems like a great answer to some of that. And you know,
fall's a great time to...
Yeah, really, you should be thinking about that now. If you get too late, it limits your choices. But, and there's some great resources out there on planting cover crops. It's kind of escaping me. I think it's the Midwest Cover Crops Council, I believe,
that sounds right.
Has a website where there's a really great selection tool that tells you for your county of Illinois or your area the different cover crops and when to plant them, and then also has some of the services they provide, whether that is scavenging nitrogen from the soil, loosening the soil like a tillage turnip or something would do. And so you can kind of select your cover crop not only by the time you want to plant it, but by all those different characteristics that you want. So that's kind of one of the places I start. It kind of builds your results into a little table you can look at. So that's a great resource for kind of getting a picture of what you can plant and what those plants might do. But
and you could just... I know a lot of people don't want to do this, but you can just lay compost on top of things.
A couple inches of compost.
But I love the cover crop thing. I am doing cover crops at one of my vegetable gardens, a community garden that I work with. And we found, there's a lot of weeds because it used to be lawn. There's a really high amount of phosphorus in there for some reason. I think maybe because we did add so much organic matter, or maybe because it was fertilized when it was lawn. I'm just guessing here. And we do want to break up the soil, so I'm going to put in 3 different cover crops. I'm going to do kale, arugula, and tillage radishes. And then we're also going to eat that stuff, not the tillage
you
radishes.
Could harvest the other two, right?
But and I seriously doubt the arugula or the kale even die back, because last year I planted spinach in this same garden and was harvesting spinach as soon as spring came. Yeah. So I think the cover crop is such a great idea, and it's getting more and more popular. People are starting to see the benefits of it. It's more than just breaking up the soil. It's preventing weeds, getting rid of diseases, balancing your soil nutrients.
It's a part of crop rotation.
Good.
Yeah, it should be a part of your crop rotation plan as well if you're using them.
Yeah, so hopefully that helps, Jennifer. Give you some things to try there. Okay, Julie is asking, can we recommend any place to send samples for vegetable bed soil testing? And yep, we sure can. If you stop by any extension office, most of us have soil test kits in our offices. So we'll give you the little bag to put the soil sample in, usually a little instructions on how to do it. And then you will send that off to the address on it. They'll send you back a report, and then we can help you read that report if you need to. But yeah, we have the kits, and then you mail them off to a lab.
So we don't test them.
Yeah.
University of Illinois doesn't test them. And we actually have a list. All extension people have a list of soil testing places, and we can try to get that list to Aaron.
There's a website too. There's a website for soil test labs. Yep.
But yeah, I have the same way. I have a particular lab that I don't have any competing labs, so I can promote this particular one. And soil test it. You are doing the right thing by getting a soil test. People over fertilize. People don't realize what they're doing with their crops, and a simple soil test will tell you so much about how to grow.
Yeah, without a soil test, it's a total guess.
I know. And I always say the soil is the secret. You want to grow great plants, get a soil test.
Yeah, start with the soil.
And they give you exact recommendations too. That's what I love about these labs. They'll say, do this, this, and this. And
so you put in there what you're trying to grow, like if it's lawn, if it's vegetable garden, and then they'll recommend based on what you're trying to grow in that space, which is great.
Well, and a lot of the testing labs also, beyond just having extension help you interpret the results, they have an agronomist on staff that can help you interpret those results and understand what that means for your garden.
So there's a lot of help. Awesome. So Grant shared for us the link to the Cover Crop Council, so thank you for sharing that, Grant. And then we've got the link in there to the soil test website, so definitely check that out.
Oh yeah, I learned what I was going to plant as my cover crops from Grant.
Oh, see, Grant is our expert, so ask him. Okay, let's see. We've got another question here from Janet. Any type of fig tree that will do well in the St. Louis area? Yeah, what is that cultivar called? Do you remember?
Well, there's Chicago fig. I guess
that's the one that. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
That's what I've planted, and actually, I planted that in Southern Illinois and had pretty good luck. There was one year it got killed, died back, but they survived the winter in Southern Illinois climate. So was it St. Louis area? I believe?
St. Louis area. So they
so
should be fine.
It should do okay. You obviously want to find a protected area. You don't want it in an exposed spot. I planted it in a real protected spot in the backyard. But from time to time it will die back, but it came back and had fruit the same year. So
it's still pretty good.
Once you get a good root system going, they're pretty hardy. And I know right here in Champaign-Urbana we have one out at the Idea Garden, and I'd have to look at the variety, but it may be available on our website. We do have a website for the Idea Garden. If you go to the Illinois Extension website and then navigate your way to Champaign County and look at our Master Gardeners page, the Idea Garden has its own website that has plant lists. So
nice.
that may be in there. I can't say for sure it is, but so I can tell you there's one that grows here in Champaign County.
The Chicago hardy one is the one that I was thinking of. There might be others though. Yeah.
The first thing I'm thinking turkey, something brown turkey.
Yeah, I don't know that Chicago fig is necessarily the variety name, but that's kind of what I've always known it as.
That's what I always hear. Yeah.
I got it off a local grower in Southern Illinois as the plant.
So try it out. I think especially in St. Louis, I think you'd be pretty successful. Okay, another question here from Nancy. What time of year should I plant a pollinator mix? Should you fall or wait until spring? So like a pollinator seed mix.
So from seed?
Yeah.
I think if there's probably going to be a lot of annuals in there, so spring.
Yeah.
Spring.
Yeah, I would find out what's in your mix.
I mean, if it were a lot of perennials, I mean, you could plant it now and, have enough root growth before you go into, the cold season. But a lot of the ones I see have annuals in them.
Yeah, me too. That's a good point. I wasn't thinking about the annuals.
Mm-hmm. What about milkweeds? A lot of people ask that. When's the best time to seed in milkweed? Would you do it in the fall?
You do it in the fall.
Yeah.
The seed requires vernalization. So what I do is I wait until the pod is almost ready to pop on. It's brown. Pop off. Then I'll put that seed, and then you'll see it has this white fluffy stuff, and it's called phlox. Actually, they used to use it for bedding material back in the olden days.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
It's a great way, what's amazing about the phlox is that's how the seeds are carried around by the wind. But you got to knock that phlox off first. So I put it in a cup with a quarter, and I'll sit there and I'll just shake it, get that phlox off, and then plant them this fall.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a bad time to kind of prep your area this fall for the spring planting, so then you're ready as soon as things kind of warm up.
Yeah, and she said it's seed from pheasants forever. So if you can find out, Nancy, what particular species is in there, that would help you find out a little bit too. Because if it is perennials, you could definitely do it now.
And it'd probably be better now because you're not going to get as much seed competition.
Yeah.
With seed.
Weed.
Okay.
Weed, seed, they can be both there.
As we progress in this pregnancy, I'm going to be saying more and more stupid things. But because it's easier to seed in the fall because you don't have the weed competition that you have in the spring.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's not, and obviously you need to water it if we're not getting rain. But fall's a great time. Okay, keep those questions coming in the comment box. We have a couple of questions here that people put in ahead of time, so we're going to do some of those. So we have a question here. How do you successfully grow blueberry bushes in Champaign? Tips for blueberry bushes.
I just picked out that talking point for someone.
There you go.
I just talked about this a week ago. So the biggest thing with blueberries is they require more acidic soil than we have here in Champaign-Urbana. So the way that I recommend doing it and how I've established them both here and in Southern Illinois where I used to live is preparing the soil with by removing all plant competition, so you have pretty much bare soil, and then getting some type of granular product that will acidify the soil. I've used elemental sulfur. That's organic approved. It's not synthetically produced. There's other things that are synthetically produced that acidify soil as well. And that product should have a recommendation for how much to spread per square feet. I kind of try to estimate that generously is what I've found. The first time I ever did this, I think I put out the exact amount and measured off my area, and I don't feel like I got enough acidity to my blueberries. So that's kind of the first step, and that can happen this fall. I recommend probably planting them in the spring, but getting that acidifying material worked into the soil this fall so it has all winter to react and do its thing. Come spring then, you're ready to plant in that area, and I recommend when you plant actually into the planting hole mixing in some peat. So what that does is adds a little bit of acidity. It probably doesn't give us a ton of acidity, but it gives us a high amount of organic matter in that planting hole with relatively low nutrients. Other types of compost we would add organic matter with would probably add a little more nutrients. So blueberries don't take a high amount of nutrients, and when you add that, you actually increase the success of weeds around them. So again, adding some of that into the soil at planting time. Now, one thing that's probably also important in this is to take a soil test at the start so you know where you're starting.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I would almost recommend maybe even testing in the spring again to see what you got out of the winter. It just depends on how often you want to be sending in samples. But I'd say if you've felt like you've done a pretty good job of getting that granular product into the soil and acidifying, you're probably pretty good to plant and then kind of test it next fall and see where you're at. If you didn't get it acidic enough, your blueberry plants are going to show you. With foliar symptoms, yellowing of the leaves and just your typical signs of nutrient deficiencies. But over time, you're going to have to continually add that granular product to the soil surface, and that kind of varies with the site, how much you need to add and how often. And so that's where a little bit of soil testing for the first few years is really going to help you get kind of dialed into how much your soil and your plants are using per year. But you're always going to have to be kind of adding that acidifying product. Obviously, mulch is a great addition to that blueberry bed. They are pretty shallow rooted, and the roots tend to dry out pretty quickly. So they take, for really full production scale blueberries, really a lot of soil moisture, and just like a lot of things, not poorly drained soil, but well drained soil. So in a nutshell, that's how you would establish blueberries, and everything about their management is a whole nother discussion.
But the first part is getting that pH right. Otherwise,
get
nothing
the
else
pH right
is gonna work.
And really, once you get that going, they are highly productive plants. I mean, you get a ton of blueberries off of healthy blueberry shrubs.
Awesome.
So.
Yeah, and we shared it looks like you had an article in the News Gazette recently on blueberries.
Yeah, I did.
We shared that, so you can read a little bit more.
And on that, I didn't get into the maintenance and care side, because as I started to write that thing, it became about 3 articles.
Well, yeah.
So I just kind of handled fall prep.
Get the soil figured out. Yeah.
You know what my opinion is on blueberries? You can tell what kind of horticulturist I am. Don't grow blueberries.
Is that too much work?
It is too much work. I would grow serviceberry instead. I think serviceberry is an underutilized, large shrub or small tree that has amazing tasting berries, and most people don't know about them. It's Amelanker is the scientific name, but it has really pretty flowers, and it has these beautiful blueberry tasting berries, and it has a really good fall color, and it's just you don't have to acidify the soil, you don't have to do any maintenance. It
just depends how much work you want to put in.
Well, I would definitely put my pounds of blueberries per shrub up against your serviceberry.
That's very
You're
true.
Probably right.
Your harvest is going to be much better.
But no, that is a great native alternative, and you probably gain a lot of other associations with wildlife that my blueberry bushes don't have, because they're not necessarily native to here. So
awesome.
So, yeah.
Okay, and it looks like Kathy has messaged us some photos of her vines. So let's take a look at these and see what we can find out. So this is the first photo. So it looks like the flowers haven't quite opened up yet. Number 2.
Looks like a different leaf.
Yeah, that's definitely a different vine.
Oh, it's milkweed
3.
vine. It's got to be
that
milkweed
one.
vine.
That one is the third one. This one though is different.
Because of the way
that looks like
veins.
clematis foliage to me. So Kathy, photo number 1 that has the buds that aren't quite open yet, that I think does look like sweet autumn clematis to me.
Yeah, I think I agree on that.
But then the other 2, the second 2, we think looks like milkweed vine. The one that has the white flowers.
Guess
open
what it's
now.
covered in?
Aphids. So
friendly
if
aphids.
you see those leaves are kind of sticky, then
all you have to do is pinch off the vine. If this milky white sap comes out of the stem, then you have milkweed vine. A lot of people think it's a weed, which it doesn't have these amazing ornamental qualities because the flowers are so small, but it does support the monarchs.
That's all good. So hopefully that'll help you out, Kathy.
Nice to see our aphids helping us out with the
ID. Exactly.
I was like, notice the aphids. There we go.
Aphids. Okay, awesome. We got a couple questions here. Janet is mentioning that she grows several types of passion vines. A couple of them have escaped the container. They've not only survived, but have become invasive, but the pollinators love them. So I'm conflicted about trying to kill them back. Any ideas? Do we keep the passion vine?
Don't we have...
Kill it off.
Well,
I don't know if I can talk for sure, but don't we have a native passion vine? No.
I'm not sure on that. I can't say definitively.
I couldn't either.
I guess in trying to understand the invasiveness of a plant, if you're not next to high quality natural areas, maybe it doesn't matter that you have a little bit of it, around the area that it is in your garden space. And kind of like Candice talked about, keeping it contained to that area. So maybe it's okay to let it expand a little bit into a greater area than it started, but
But if you're right next to a wooded area, probably not the best idea.
And my yard borders, pretty high quality natural areas, and so I feel like I don't want those kind of things getting out of control at all, or really even growing to start with. So I really try hard not to have invasive things. But in other areas, in the middle of a town,
you have one at your idea garden, a passion flower vine growing in the tropical section in the corner.
Oh, I can
and it's a perennial because it comes back every year.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of personal preference.
Properly contained.
Yeah.
You can always, I don't know what the seed heads look like off the top of my head, but you can always not let it seed.
Yeah, you could cut those before they drop seed, certainly. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, keep those questions coming. We've got a couple others here that have come in ahead of time. This one's about Creeping Charlie. What is the easiest way to get rid of Creeping Charlie without using Roundup?
I'm going to let Ryan answer this, but in the words of one of my professors, Raymond Cloyd, napalm.
Yeah.
The only thing...
Move.
It is a bad one, and it's all over my property. I've just kind of accepted the fact that it's in some places, but... hand pulling really, I think, is my best recommendation for not using a chemical, and it just takes diligence. I mean, it's a great job for kids if you can get them interested and able to see the plant and pull it. Certainly pull's easy. It's really it's not even one that mowing pressure can take out, because where it's at, it's probably shady, and that's really what's giving it the advantage, is that little bit of shade it's got.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I don't mind it so much in the lawn. I mean, because I'm kind of if it's green, it's fine in the lawn. But once it starts to creep into landscape beds, that's when I start to hand pull.
And
just try to.
Yeah, just the other night I was out just kind of with my kids right before dark and stuff, and just messing around our backyard, and it's super easy to pull out of the mulch. It's almost like it was kind of rooted up in the mulch still.
Yeah, it doesn't root very
down
deeply
in the soil. So
yeah,
in places you don't want it, it's pretty easy to hand pull. For a few spots, I used a little hoe to kind of just pull it out, so I didn't have to climb all the way in. But yeah, it's a bad one. That's just
consistency staying on.
And I think that if you don't have something that's going to compete with with it, then you're not ever going to win, no matter how much you pull.
Yes.
For instance, our lawn sites, they tell us, if you want to get rid of some weeds, make sure the grass is fertilized and do well. Or, when he says, Creeping Charlie likes a lot of shade, maybe you need to plant a ground cover in that area, and hopefully the ground cover can choke out the Creeping Charlie.
Prune a tree and open up a little bit of light. See, I was kind of contemplating this in an area in our yard just this spring. A lot of Creeping Charlie, a lot of shade. Do I want to prune this tree, or what do I want to do? And I guess my solution was to mulch. And that's actually one of the spots I was picking Creeping Charlie out of. So a little bit of it came through, but I mean, that heavy layer of mulch not only helps the tree, but suppresses the Creeping Charlie to a manageable level. So
we've had bindweed horribly in one of our gardens, and one way that we had to do it. We did it. It lasted maybe 2 or 3 years. Was we put cardboard and mulch, and we did 4 inches of mulch, and we had these raised beds, and it was a children's garden, and it kind of got rid of the bindweed for a little bit. But, we had to do it again because it's still there.
Yeah. But boy, that cardboard and mulch combination is really good.
That's what I
didn't do that, so I didn't get that effect. But I've done it in the past, and man, that is a really good one, because it just, that cardboard blanks out the seed bed.
Smothers out anything down there.
And I guess, after 3 years,
eventually
it stops working
down.
because it's broken down.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
It actually, I've been surprised at how quickly it decomposes underneath the mulch.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens pretty quick. It doesn't last too long.
So it works well. Okay, keep those questions coming. Kathy just popped one in here. She's bought several tall phlox a month or 2 ago, put 2 in a container garden, and after they were done blooming, the foliage died back. It looks pretty crispy now, not just end of the season ratty, so something else. Is the plant likely dead, or is there a good chance it'll come back next year if I dig up the roots and put them in the garden?
What kind of bed? Is it like a raised bed? Is it like a container? Because sometimes, stuff comes back in containers really well.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't want to tell you to stress it out any more than it's already been stressed out.
I know.
I will plant, for instance, I've planted Baptisia. And it's called blue indigo, a wonderful plant. Mm-hmm. Candice probably uses it all the time. And the first year, it was like, what is happening? Not growing. The second year, nothing. Not even a little green
any
spot.
growth.
The third year, now I have a plant.
Huh.
So sometimes I think, especially when they're young plants or they get too stressed out, they just go dormant for a little bit and then they come back the next year. I definitely would not throw it away.
No, I would either leave keep that container and leave that container outside, or take it out of the container now and plant it in a bed and water it really well, and
just cut some of it back and try your hardest not to disturb any of the roots.
Yeah, I wouldn't give up yet. I would try to plant it and just see what happens.
Yeah, I agree.
You never know. Plants are crazy.
I'm always shocked at what comes back.
I know, exactly. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. Okay, we've got another question here ahead of time that we can do while we're waiting for some other ones. Haley asks, she has a couple questions here. How many times should I be adding compost to my raised bed throughout the season? Generally, I just do it once in the spring before planting, but I wasn't sure. How many times?
I guess it depends what you're growing.
Yeah.
If you're growing annuals or perennials.
I guess for me, just out of laziness, I try and do it once a year.
Mm-hmm.
I try and add I think that's what I think is a good amount for the year.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're growing vegetables, because typically you're going to plant them you're going to add that compost, get everything planted in the spring, and then from a lot of things, it's in there through the season. If it's a tomato, it's going to be in there.
Yeah, tomatoes are a really heavy feeder, and you only fertilize tomatoes maybe twice, 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. I usually fertilize tomatoes maybe 3 weeks after I plant them. Again, when I see the little tiny the tiny tomatoes, and then again 3 weeks later, and that's all you have to fertilize.
Yeah.
Like I said, as a culture, we fertilize too much, so you being lazy is probably a great thing.
Yeah.
Now, unless you're planting annuals, like petunias, and they kind of need a little slow release
you're gonna
fertilizer
have a
added.
Bed.
I find that when I'm fertilizing, I go to fertilize my annuals, and that's it.
Yeah. So I think you're probably fine with the one-time spring. You could always do a soil test, find out what your soil's like.
Even if she's doing it every spring, you're probably really good.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yep. Okay, and then our second question, which is an excellent question we got to answer. What does it take to be successful in a career in horticulture?
Wow.
Some luck.
My philosophy on life.
Tell us, Kelly. Tell us.
I love what I do.
I mean, obviously, education is where you start. I think we all have kind of different backgrounds, but I know I started with a junior college horticulture degree, and then transferred on to do a 4-year degree. So it kind of depends on your long-term goal and what you want to do in the horticulture industry.
Yeah, I mean, I also think something that's huge is grabbing what experience you can while you're in school, or getting that field experience. And I feel like college students that I talk to nowadays, especially junior college students, are really starved for that field experience.
Mm-hmm.
So
internships.
Everybody can get the degree, but if you come out of that with a little bit of experience that you can show, that's just huge for getting that first job. So, that's something that I've kind of been interested in exploring, how our master gardeners can get college students more hands-on experience, because our master gardener volunteers have that experience. They have a ton of field experience. They're doing it all the time, but just making that connection is often really hard. So, sometimes that might be an unpaid internship or something you need to start with. Or what I did in college was volunteered for different labs and eventually got some paying jobs doing some of these things. But I volunteered a lot of time to other research projects and in places where professors said they needed help, and that got me some experience and got me a leg up. So. Yeah.
Candice and I worked at the research greenhouse here at the U of I when we were undergrads, and I think that kind of made a big difference to both of us because we learned a lot We were doing more than just watering plants.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
For sure.
Yeah. So get experiences, get education, talk to people in the hort industry too. I mean, we're always happy to help.
I've had some great internships too.
Mm-hmm.
Holton Arboretum. It was just amazing. We got to learn so much, and it's the biggest arboretum in the United States. It's in Cleveland, outside of Cleveland. Just went rotating through gardens, and after working in that garden, I was like, yeah, public garden's not for me, because I need fast pace.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I'm in education, because I get to do something different every single day, and I don't get bored.
Yeah.
So
definitely something different every day.
Yeah.
I feel like education is right up my alley. I think all three of us were born to do this job.
Yeah. So Haley, join us in horticulture. We need you. There's actually a national movement to kind of change the face of horticulture, because it is actually a need that we need to get young people excited about.
And women.
Horticulture. Many people don't know what the word horticulture means, so we're trying to kind of put a different image on it so it's more exciting.
Yeah, and women farmers and people that, really all you have to do is just be passionate and you'll be successful, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and try it. Don't feel bad if a few plants die along the way.
Yeah.
How many plants do you think
kill
he's
plants all the time.
Quite a few.
Let's see, who at this table has killed the most plants?
I don't know. It'd be tough.
It's probably just who's been doing it the longest.
Yeah,
all that comes out to.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for that question, Haley. We've got a couple others that have come in here, and I think we've got about 10 minutes or so left, so get those questions in. Oh, shoot. No, they went away. What is the best time to trim and shape fragrant sumac? They're located in the Chicago area, and they're in parking lot islands. Best time to trim and shape fragrant sumac.
Well, I'm trying to think when it flowers. Is it an early spring, or is it? It probably is.
I am not for sure.
I don't know either. That's what I would guess.
The rule of thumb is
after it flowers. Yeah.
Unless it flowers in the middle of the summer, then you can do it in early springs. I think the cutoff date is like June 15th.
Yeah. Typically,
so if
that's
it
what we
blooms
say.
before June 15th, you're going to prune it after it flowers. If it blooms after June 5th, you're going to prune it in the early spring as soon as stuff starts waking up.
Yeah, and the reason being the development of the flower buds.
Yeah, and it's not that you couldn't prune other times, but then you might just miss your flowering.
You might not have as good a flowering.
We want the
a safe bet for any woody plant is like the least impact is during the winter dormancy for pruning. Yeah. Now, the pruning we were just discussing is pretty focused on keeping flowering there. So that's not necessarily the most healthiest choice. The healthiest choice for the plant. Yeah. Where that's a pretty safe bet. Pruning during dormancy is going to be the healthiest thing for a woody plant. Yeah. So,
but if it blooms early spring, then you just keep in mind that you're probably going to be pruning off all your flower buds.
You're going to prune off a lot of flower buds.
And
not the end of the world.
Rather than going out there and just start whacking at the tree, I would watch a few YouTube videos, because you can thin those branches and make it just look so much better if you thin out the branches. But if you go out there and just like what they do with yews and boxwoods, then it kind of grows weird.
Yeah. Or what they're doing this time of year is like Russian sage that's in parking lot islands. They're taking their hedge trimmers and like making it a block. I'm like, why? Because they start to flop. So then they just, it's like, so do a more natural pruning technique.
Well, another rule of pruning is cutting at a branch union. Yeah. That's really how you should be doing that. Where that's shearing, it's not cutting at any branch union, it's just taking off.
Faster, but not necessarily better. Yeah. Good question, Michael. Okay, Deborah's asking ideas for blister beetle control. Her veggies are under attack.
Those were big last year, too.
Blister beetles?
Blister beetles. I think blister beetle, the fact that they fly, and they're kind of like Japanese beetles, so they're going to be very difficult for you to control, depending what crop it is on. I know people hate it when I say this, but a cover crop, not cover crop.
A row cover.
No. That's what I meant.
We knew what you
My
meant.
interpreter right here. A row cover, which just is excluding the Japanese. Okay,
blister.
Keep going.
The blister beetle.
The beetles we're talking about.
Yeah. So in many types of beetles, you can put a floating row cover over the crop, whatever it is, vegetable. and that will exclude them from getting.
Yeah, I highly recommend the exclusion. That's just one of the best.
If it's a crop that needs pollinated though, that's tricky. You're gonna have to remove that to allow the pollinators in. But for a lot of vegetables, you don't necessarily.
I doubt there's much pollination going on right now.
Mostly the cucurbits would be the only. They're the main thing that needs that.
Maybe a few peppers still pollinating and producing, and some tomatoes, but so some of our tomatoes don't need pollinators, and same with peppers. So,
or something like kale. Like that's what I put in. That's what I exclude stuff from a lot because so many things like to eat kale.
Leafy vegetables doesn't matter.
Or you're not.
You don't need a pollinator.
Caring about
you're just eating the leaves,
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way,
do you want to?
Now is the time for.
We have
Ryan.
7 minutes left, so if you have any last minute questions, get them in while we're waiting.
So we thought if we didn't have enough questions, we might talk a little bit about fall gardening or planting your fall garden. So one of those crops that I love to do is kale. We brought in some seed packets of a couple different types of kale. So really now is probably the time to be establishing kale if you want to. And the way I've always done it is, I've planted more than I need and I've thinned, essentially. So a lot of other crops are like that. And there's probably really good directions on the back of your packet as to what kind of spacing, how deep it needs to be. So probably a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch deep for each seed. And I mean, I've planted them as close as just a couple inches apart and then thinned them to about 6-8 inches between plants, or maybe even a little bit more as the stand comes up. So great crop to get going now, because as it gets colder and you have a mature plant, it actually sweetens the taste of it, and that cold temperature really makes that kale just excellent about November time. So that's a good one to start. Another one I do often in the fall is just lettuce and greens, and kind of the same concept of planting a lot and thinning it back. And you can even, if you plan well and leave a little bit of space, some of those small lettuce plants you thin, you can start in another little section and kind of expand your bed. I usually do lettuce in succession plantings where you plant it every 10 days apart.
Space it out.
So you can have like spaced out harvests and a better supply, a more consistent supply of lettuce. But those are a couple of my favorite fall crops. I know you guys had a few root crops.
And you're not gonna wait forever to harvest those. You're gonna harvest those when they're about 3 inches. That's when they're gonna taste the best.
Yeah, the young, soft.
And so, like
of the lettuce,
of the lettuce, there's spinach. You pinch the 3-inch pieces, and I always eat the seedlings. And that takes me to carrots. I'm going to start some carrots in a community garden right now, because I would like to harvest them around the holiday season. And the reason is because they're supposed to be the sweetest tasting carrots that you can possibly have, because the carrot is trying to defend itself from the cold weather, so it produces more sugars. The sugars prevent the cells in the carrot from exploding or being punctured, so you have this really sweet tasting carrots. And carrots can take a light frost. And so what I'm going to do is I'm doing this week. I'm going to just spread my seed out. Now carrot seed is hard to spread out, let me tell you, because it's little tiny, and you have to go through and you have to thin them. But what I do with the thinnings is I eat them, because the carrot tops actually taste like carrots, and it is absolutely delicious. So I'm going to do this, and if I got a hard frost, I might put a row cover over them just to save them a little bit, because but I seriously doubt we get that hard of a frost that I'm not going to have my carrots. And I'm going to do beets too. I think beets are the same thing. I love beet greens. It's actually my favorite green. Just the taste is incredible.
Yeah, they're good. That's my favorite.
So I will overseed these just so I can thin them and have a dish of greens before, and then I'll take about 1/3 of the plant as it's growing, and that won't mess up the bulb form. But I find that it's really hard to get beet seeds to germinate. So my strategy is I either soak them in water overnight, and I've had some great success, or I pre-germinate them in a wet paper towel, which means you just put the seeds in a wet paper towel, keep it wet. Eventually you'll have little roots come out, and then you plant them. Because sometimes these beets don't like to, the soil gets too crusty and they don't like to go above it. But just me soaking them overnight, I've had great success with beet seeds.
That's a great tip.
That's a good idea, yeah. Okay, we've got one more question with 3 minutes left, so I think this will be our last one. Sandy has a question. She has the old-fashioned perennial petunias, probably like the wild petunias. How can I move some of these flowers? Should I do seed or transplant? Well, I think you could do a couple different things. One, you could divide the kind of stand of petunias that you have. So you could dig up some small portions of those perennials and move them now. And now is still an okay time to do that. You just want to water well going into fall. Or, like you mentioned, you could also collect the seed from those. So if there's seed pods forming, you could collect that seed and then germinate it and start transplants next year and plant them out. So.
Yeah, I think it'd be easier to divide it.
That's what I would do. It'd be a lot faster to just divide some and move it. That's what I would do. But you could certainly do seed.
And you want to cut back some of that top growth.
Yeah. You don't need to leave all that leggy, linky growth that we have this time of year.
I actually just discovered this plant, this perennial petunia in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, they're nice.
I love this plant. It's so beautiful. I want to grow it at my house now.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for putting in your questions today. We had almost a consistent questions the whole time.
Yeah,
so that was
nice.
Awesome. So we'll put a couple more things probably into the comments, so check back for more resources, and we will see you again for the next Facebook Live. Oh, yeah. Do you want to share your... we can talk about your vegetable gardening
before
book.
we go, I brought in a great newer publication from Extension. So this is Vegetable Gardening in the Midwest, and this is an update. I know this is something that was in my library for years as the older version.
Yeah, I have it.
So this updated version was done by current Extension folks, and it has a lot of the old flavor of the old publication, which I like. But they've added some new variety recommendations and some other stuff to this. So there's a whole section on new varieties and things in the back. So
so that's
really
like your Bible for vegetable gardening.
Yeah.
If you need to know what variety, when the plant spacing,
this was written by one of Candice and I's favorite professors from U of I, Dr. Voigt. And he did a great job. I read this book all the time.
I reference it all the time.
He makes it so simple and easy. So if you're at all interested in vegetable gardening, this is the book for you.
Yeah, and we've got the link in there for you. So definitely check it out. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.